Hey Terry, it's the steering committee calling in.
Yes, sir.
You're on speaker in front of everybody. We're getting ready to call the meeting to order, so just want to let you know.
Okay, I'm here.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Paulding County Airport Authority Citizen Steering Committee. We've got an agenda here. I'd like to start off with an invocation. Gary's going to lead us in an invocation.
Father, we come to you tonight with thankful hearts, with humble hearts. We praise you for the rain that we're having. Father, we ask you to just bless each one of us here tonight, the time that we're devoting to this effort. Father, we ask you to be with each person represented. Bless them. Now be with us as we conduct this business. May it be pleasing. May we have clear minds and clear hearts in order to do this work. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. John, you want to lead the pledge?
Turn and face the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First agenda item is to discuss everybody should have a copy of the minutes of the last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review these minutes? Yes. Any comments? If not, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
I make a motion.
Okay.
You say.
Oh, okay.
All approved? All in favor? Aye. John Dean's our secretary, so he's going to be taking minutes. And since this is our first meeting, I just thought I'd go around just with the folks that are here, who everybody is, and who appointed them to this steering committee. John, you want to start off?
My name is John Dean. I was appointed by Todd Purnell to the committee.
My name's Gary Weekly. I was appointed by Mayor Dev of Hiram to the committee.
My name is Garrett Malden. I live right downtown city of Dallas, and I was appointed by Mayor Boyd Austin of the city of Dallas.
I'm Larry Reinhardt, and I was appointed by Chairman David Austin.
My name's Mike Mason, appointed by David Barnett.
My name is Cecilia McMicken, appointed by the Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Todd Connell, Post 2 Commissioner.
And Dave Carmichael, Post 1 Commissioner.
And
I'm Terry Tippett, nominated by Dave Carmichael.
thank you. The next thing, I just wanted to see if the commissioners had anything they wanted to share with us before we got into our minutes, anything that occurred since last meeting, or anything you all want to say to kind of open up the meeting before we start talking.
Who's the individual that we're missing last week?
Mark Chaffrey, C-H-A-F-F-E-R-Y.
Who was he appointed by?
Post 3.
Tommy Graham.
I would almost bet because we didn't have him last week, we didn't use his communications or his email address, and he probably is not aware of tonight. I can follow up on it. I didn't even think about that till we sat down here.
Other than that, everybody's present, right, John?
Right, everyone else is ready.
I appreciate the fact that you jumped on it after 1 week. You know, I think while the iron's hot, you're going to get a game plan. I'm just here to help facilitate. I did send out an email. I guess everybody got it. Just a little more information about why the wording of the current legislation is now deemed inappropriate or antiquated. It's one of the main reasons why the steering committees were brought together, just to look at that. That's all I have.
I just sent you Mark's contact number, info to you. I'd just like to thank y'all for volunteering when somebody called you to serve on the committee. And just tell you, just like I said at the last meeting, my expectation is for you each to stand on your own 2 feet, use your own heart and mind, and make some decisions that you can forward on to the commissioners. It's good advice for the people of the county, and work together as a team. And I think this group of folks here will do that. So I appreciate it. John, I appreciate you stepping up and being the secretary. And Mike, I appreciate you volunteering to be the chairman. So appreciate each and every one of you.
All right, thank you. What I thought we'd do next was just kind of start with John, and everybody should have had a chance to review the Paulding County Authority legislation and the IBA, and just kind of take a few minutes to talk about what your initial impressions were with the law and the act and what you know. And you know, one of the main charge of this committee, as far as we know now, is to look at the law and perhaps give recommendations to the commissioner and then the delegation to the General Assembly to give them some input. So with that, John, you want to spend a few minutes?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief and keep this at a top level. I've read this document probably more than I really want to say. First of all, it's written as a law or as a guideline. It's very hard to understand, but I'm sure that the people that operate under it does. But when I got to looking at this document, I went back and got to looking at why are we here as a steering committee? What are we doing here? What's our purpose? And from my previous background, getting organized and getting our arms around about where we're at, what we're doing, and how we're going to do this is going to be key. And I looked at it, and we've got lawsuits, we've got projects that overrun budgets, they're behind schedule, and it's throughout the county. So I started looking at possibly, it's sort of almost like a root cause analysis of why we have a steering committee to review a law. Colonel Carmichael made a statement that this was antiquated. Well, our Constitution is 200 years old. So really, this shouldn't be antiquated if it was written right. But the more I looked at it, the more, and I've talked to Todd and Colonel Carmichael both, and Dave Austin about this. My concerns is not, we could make this document 1,000 pages, we could make it 2 pages with a cover page. We could make this the New Testament. And until we get proper planning, tracking, and execution of any project in the county, this group right here, we have more expertise and subject matter experts on this team than you could ever imagine. We can revise these documents, but until the county gets our leadership, and in all due respect, sir, you know what happens when you hear that from an enlisted man. We need to get our management practices under control. And it's not just the airport, it's turn lanes at the new hospital that we approved $300,000 and people didn't even know which side of the road it's on. The only reason we're addressing this from an airport is it's bigger. The smaller stuff we can live with. But from what I see of this and going back and looking at where we're at and how we got here and what we're trying to accomplish, we need to not only focus on this document right here, but I think we need to have sidebars or side topics that we can push out for other committees to look at about how we manage our projects within the county itself. So that's my first take of where we're at. I really want to hope that we can get ourselves organized and get some firm direction about what our objectives are for the committee. That's my biggest concern. Is what are our deliverables to the commissioners?
Okay.
My concern when I read this, I didn't have that much concern with the ordinance as written. My whole interest lie in what's causing the rub. And is it actually language, or is it something other than language? When I look at the ordinance for the IBA, I'm assuming that the IBA will be reviewing that, the steering committee will be reviewing that and managing that verbiage. There may be some clarification needed there. I believe there's a lawsuit pending or in hearing on that at this point in time. But we've got an airport. Okay, now what's supposedly wrong with it or right with it, and what are we going to do to fix it? What is the rub? Why are we having so much concern over it? And is it actually verbiage that we're considering here, or is it something great? I'm a bit confused at that level. I've read through this and except for portions of legalese which are obviously beyond my scope, I didn't have that much problem with the verbiage as written.
From my perspective, just looking at the ordinance, and ordinances are, like John said, they're kind of legalese and not all that easy to understand.
Sorry.
But what struck me as odd is that the membership of the airport authority is comprised of all the membership of the IBA. It just struck me as odd. And it added to the oddity was that the airport authority members at large have a 4-year term, but the IBA members at large have a 3-year term. And so it just didn't seem to fit together like it should. That was what struck me as odd in the ordinance. All the stuff about the bond revenue and all, I have no authority in knowing if that's right or wrong. But I did look at if we had any other authorities in Paulding County, and there's a Facilities and Technology Authority. So I looked at their ordinance, and it was, except for some different wording, all the sections were almost exactly the same. So a ordinance on authorities, this is fairly generic.
It looks like it's almost plagiarized.
Yeah, it looked like one of them was a little older. Yeah. Except for the membership aspect of it, that was the only thing that really caught my eyes on.
Yeah, so when I looked at it, I think I agree with you on the membership. The way I went back and looked at it was objectively back in 1972 when the law was actually passed. Back then the citizens, the population of this county was considerably smaller than it is today. And I'm assuming that when they wrote this portion of the membership, my assumption is that it was based off of the fact that they didn't believe they were going to get that much public participation as far as finding board members that were either A, qualified to be on the board, and or that were willing to volunteer their time to actually be part of it. So my interpretation is they decided to put the Industrial Building Authority members on there and made them the overwhelming majority of members that were on the board. Is that to say that it's correct today in 2014? I would venture to say, no, I don't disagree that there shouldn't be some Industrial Building Authority members that are on the board, but I don't believe that they should also hold the same positions from the IBA to the Airports Authority. So I think that would I think in the end, this board will probably tackle membership more so than anything else. As far as the bonds and the payments and everything else, it was legalese. To get to your point where you felt like it was plagiarized or that it was, copied from over and over, I'm sure if you went and looked at many laws that were passed in this state.
Matter of fact, I went to the state laws and looked up some of the state laws, and it's almost a mirror image of the same.
And the same thing happens in the federal government. I've read certain laws that have been passed in Congress, and when you read them, I was reading one day, and I read another one an hour later and I just thought I was reading the same one and they had just changed the names, that was all. So, you know, to say, I don't know if we need to go through and rewrite every bit and piece of this language, but, you know, I think we should focus in on certain aspects of how everything comes about, so I'll leave it at that.
Terry, you're up.
Okay, I think my observation on it was this law was written at a time before we had a functional airport in Paulding County. And now that we've got a functional airport in Paulding County, I think our needs are a little different than they were back when this law was originally passed. I think I agree with the consensus of everybody else. The majority of the members being made up of the IBA means that the majority of the members are not necessarily people who are experts in the business of aviation. So they can make laws, they can make plans and so forth, and carry the day in a way that may or may not be in the best interest of a functioning airport. So I guess my input would be, I think we need to take a hard look at the membership and see if we can't get more aviation professionals to manage what is now a very fine asset for the county in a way that would be best for aviation business and horse business in general in the county. Not that the current board has done anything bad. I'm just looking forward, going into the future. What is going to happen if we get a board made up of people who have no interest in aviation? I've seen too many airports. I could name a dozen of them right now that are just ghost towns because the municipalities who run them have not run them as a professional airport should be run. So I'm concerned that there isn't a mechanism for getting a higher percentage of aviation professionals on the airport authority, and I believe that in Paulding County, we've got plenty of folks that know something about aviation that could make up a good board.
All right, thanks. Just by way of background, I am a law lawyer, and I did dabble in economic development law. And one of the things I focused on, and just my legal background, was a corporate governance issue, which is the same thing you all talked about as far as having joint boards with the IBA and Airport Authority, which, you know, I echo what you said. Back in those days, it was probably not a whole lot of people that could serve, but the county's grown, got more sophisticated. I think there's probably room for improvement to have that, to get some more diversification of boards in these areas. So that was number one. Number two was, you know, you're right, a lot of this is legalese, but I focus primarily on the power section. If you look at section 7, I think.
Yeah, 307.
You know, it's pretty broad. And then specifically, moving on to section 27, purpose of the authority, which, in my opinion, that's probably one of the bigger ones where it just talks about, I mean, it's just got broad language related to aircraft and buildings and related improvements of the facilities. I mean, it's real broad language to own and operate an airport, so.
That's exactly the paragraph that I was looking at from the management standpoint. It says properly develop and operate under such types, and that was the only regulations or requirements for any type of management that I saw in the whole document.
And there's a lot of counties have airport authorities. I bet if you looked at the language, it's probably almost exactly the same.
You talk about a bond, it's a page and a half, you talk about the authority, and it's one paragraph.
Right.
Whoops.
So a lot of that's boilerplate. It's really in the purpose and some of the other things that you can kind of focus in on.
And just from an organizational standpoint, I actually drew an arrow and put the purpose of the airport underneath the definition of what it is. I mean, it's short title, the airport authority, the purpose, and then the membership would be my order of sequence if you were actually putting them in order. You don't usually bury purpose down at the last of the document.
May have been an adder at the time.
Yeah.
Just chronologically put it in there.
Couldn't cut and paste.
So the just to recap, that's what I had, just the interlocking boards, corporate governance, and focus on the powers of authority.
The main problem that I have with it, I think there needs to be a separate and very distinct difference between, the IBA needs to be completely separate from the airport authority. I think that maybe instead of the commission chairman, the chamber president, the mayor of Dallas, Mayor Hiram, I think that maybe other members, say for instance, David Austin's going to be automatically on the IBA. Maybe let 2 other members of the commission serve on the airport authority. Let's try to mix that up. I do think they do need to be separate and distinct. I think there also needs to be maybe a 2-year term limit on that too. And again, I'm not saying that these people aren't doing a good job. I think they are. The airport is just a new thing to all of us, to everybody in the county. And there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be some changes that have to be made. But maybe a 2-year term limit on each of those authorities. And I'm not so sure if maybe on a statewide level, the legislative bodies don't need to get a little bit more involved. I know it's a Paulding County asset. In all actuality, it's really a state of Georgia asset. It's really an asset to all of us. Maybe they need to get a little bit more involved too. Maybe they need to be making some, form their own committee and make some recommendations. But I do think that the 2 boards need to be separate. I think they need to contain completely separate members with a 2-year limit.
I don't know if you guys want to comment.
Well, you've identified a couple things that will be improvements already, so 30 minutes. Membership, it's messed up. But, it's done by the legislature, not done by the Board of Commissioners or anybody at the county level. So, I just agree with the thoughts that you presented so far.
I've got a question on that too, and maybe this is the wrong time to ask you, but because we have these rules and ordinances set out by the state, does that mean that we have to follow all of them? In other words, and here's my sergeant major mentality on this. The speed limit is 65. You have to drive under 65. But does it say anywhere in the states that you have to have a driver's license? In other words, just because we have all of this stuff, for example, sinking funds, because that's in the state ordinance, if we don't do that, we even have to have it in our ordinance in the county. We have to meet it we have to meet the state and federal requirements if we do it. But if we don't do it at all, we're not violating that ordinance. So are we getting too much in the weeds about how to do this business here and getting it away from just basic management techniques? That was a question really, is do we have to follow every paragraph and do something in every paragraph of the state law? Just because the state law gives us the authority to do bonds, do we have to do bonds by the airport authority?
I think those type of questions should be listed and
That's
bring in people in the
That's what
legislature.
I'm taking
Yes.
questions down there.
I'd like to comment. For one, all of you bring up some very good points. Cecilia, your information there on the end, as far as the boards being separate, I definitely think they are. They have 2 different functions. They need to be separate. That would be something that if that was my decision, we would have separate boards. Period, cut and dry. We wouldn't have 2 people on them. They're 2 different authorities. They have 2 different functions. And there's not a reason to have the same members on those boards. With that being said, I think you sent out some information on the lawsuit. The perfect example of that is when you have a airport authority asking to borrow $1 million from the IBA, and they go into a meeting to discuss whether we want to borrow it or not, and then the IBA, you have to ask the IBA, well, it's the same membership. It's kind of hard to it's kind of hard to draw the line there that you're here. It'd be the same as us right here, say, hey, we need to, we're two different boards and we need to borrow, you know, $100 from somebody. When we get done, we ask, hey, do you want to borrow this money? And can we borrow this money from somebody? And then we ask ourselves, or tell ourselves, yeah, we can, you know. There's an issue with that. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. It doesn't take an attorney or anybody else to figure out that there's an issue with that. So y'all brought, you know, I asked you to stand on your own 2 feet, use your own heart and mind and make some decisions. And I said at the last meeting, some common sense approach. Common sense, when you put common sense into that, we shouldn't have the same board doing it. I can't imagine in that aspect, and not to bring up something with that, but I can't imagine that the airport authority went into closed session and then you get the IBA to go into closed session and agree to loan them the money. It's the same people talking, so, and then you have to, yeah, exactly. So I think that.
Hey, it's government efficiency at its best.
Exactly. It is, and I think we've got some people on the airport authority with some aviation background experience. And so, but I just don't think those boards need to be mirror image of one another with adding 3 to one of the boards. So I think that's a simple thing that can, a simple suggestion that can go back.
It's not to say they can't lend money or work together, but
Right.
they've just got to be separate people that
Yeah,
come together
exactly.
and say we're gonna do it or not.
Exactly. I mean, because if this board right here needs the money, if we need the money, and we're gonna go look in the mirror and ask ourselves, are we really gonna say no? Because we need the money. I gotta have the money, so how are we gonna say no? You know, it's simple. We
I hadn't
need to
really thought
change
about that, but my daughter works at Home Depot, and she can't even process a sale for me just because of the perspective of, so just whether it was anything done, nobody, like everybody said, whether anybody did anything right or wrong, it's the perspective or the opportunity that's sitting out there that's got us with lawsuits and everything else, and so.
And I commend our Board of Commissioners for agreeing to get together and to try to rectify the situation. I don't think they've intentionally done anything wrong. I think that's just the way it's always been. Now things have changed. Our population has grown from about 25,000 when I first moved here in 1980 and to almost 150,000. We have an airport. We have a very valuable asset. I think, unfortunately, and that's what they're trying to do, they don't want it to be the way it always has been. That doesn't suit things now, so I commend them for.
Let's face it, back in 1972 was different. They didn't have Sarbanes-Oxley, they didn't have all this stuff that we do now, and, you know, it was pretty specific about these job positions, so I think, you know,
Right.
that's something that sounds like there's a fair amount of agreement on that.
Never considered Larry's thought either about 1972. There might not have been enough people to go around and meet all these boards. I would almost bet that there was
And it's a
nowhere near this many
volunteer
people in the meetings.
Position.
Most of the time, from the time this was formed, it wasn't used. The boards weren't ever used.
That's,
They just weren't.
There's one commissioner, there wasn't a board of
That's
commissioners.
right.
So, yeah, it's like a lot of other laws, and there's still laws on the books. In
tie your horse.
Yeah.
You have to tie your horse with 2 boots in the city. But it's illegal to have a horse in the city.
Well, if we don't have anything, yeah, I think we've made some good strides in that area. I thought maybe we'll move to the next item of our agenda. We're gonna talk later about, you know, perhaps having some guests visit Howard Maxwell, who obviously would be one of the folks that would propose new legislation, kind of get a legislative perspective from him, but unless anybody has any wrap-up remarks there, I thought we'd go to number 2. Everybody ready? Number 2, establish the steering committee's approach and plans for reviewing the current airport authority code of ordinance, submitting recommended changes to the Paulding County Commissioners. Define committee objectives, define the scope of the project, develop a schedule of completion.
And for the committee benefits, I just stuck those general definitions in there just to give kind of an outline of it. We need to figure out what our deliverables are, what the commissioners want us, what they want of us. Do you want us to a legal draft, or do you want it in layman's terms and bullet form suggestions, which I would recommend?
We're fortunate to have John here as a project manager, process guy. He's keeping us on task.
We'll have a chart, we'll be putting stickers on the wall.
We'll have workflow.
In my process, we'll have donuts and coffee. That was a big thing at Lockheed. If you did a process improvement, you got free lunches for a week plus donuts in the mornings. And then with cost savings, they cut all that out. Nobody went to process improvements after that.
I'm not getting donuts, I'm not sure.
Believe it or not, if you got assigned to a process improvement team, the first thing that somebody would come up and say was, make sure that you get the donuts at this place. Not, what are we gonna do? You know, you could be solving some big classified deal about a weapon system, but no, you make sure you get the donuts at a certain place.
Priorities. I'd prefer with the second way you described it, John, just layman's terms and bullet points, understandable, not legalese, for sure.
That would be awful hard on Mike, I believe, if we tried to do that. It would be absolutely unfair, so.
We're a citizen steering committee, so
Yes,
we're trying
citizen.
to outline broad ideas.
Unless the county wants to pay for Mike's services and actually write it properly.
My concept of what our deliverables would be would actually be a presentation to the Board of Commissioners. Along with that, with the schedule of completion, when do we have to have these in? When do you want?
I think you ought to just continue the momentum that you've already started and knock it out in a couple of months. But you don't have to have it till November, so until the delegation is starting to have meetings. The Paulding County delegation is circling up and planning ahead, strategizing for the 2015 session.
Would that be something that we should ask Howard Maxwell about when he needs it, and then back up to when the commission would need it?
Yeah.
Because if you got a due date of September to the state, then that puts us probably in the middle of June or July to have our part done. So we just got to make sure that we've got lead time and reaction time to get the end date for when it's needed, so.
Yeah, election's coming up, Howard's run unopposed, but I guess it ought to be end of November, early December might be a reasonable time, right?
I would even say probably the end of October, going into the holiday season, will be much harder to get people to show up. So.
Because if you've got to go back and do any wordsmithing or stuff like that, or reconsider stuff. What would, 15th October?
I would even say October 31st. That's my suggestion.
I think that's a good idea, try and, if we set a goal, we're more likely to be close.
Should we have a special meeting with the commissioners to do the presentation instead of doing it during one of the working sessions? If we do it during the working session, that's when we put it up at the first of the week. When is it meeting?
Second and fourth Tuesdays.
Well, it's got, I want to see how things develop.
Yeah.
Let's have our own internal target on October 31st, because we've got the whole special meetings and all that stuff that.
They could always come out and make us.
I would say this, that, and I've kind of said this before, we really, as a Board of Commissioners, we really didn't do a good job of charging y'all with what to do. Would you agree, Mike? You can say that. Mike agrees. We would, I mean, if you don't agree, we really didn't.
I don't have a written plan of what I'm supposed to do.
That's right. We didn't give you a written plan, and so I think we honestly probably dropped the ball on that. We probably should have given y'all a little bit more. I'm talking about as a board.
Oh, I would agree more than.
We get a citizen steering committee together and ask y'all to do something and serve on something, and you agree to do it. I'm not sure what I think about some of you. If you agree to do it, we didn't tell you what we're doing. But y'all said yes. Y'all said yes. And so But at the same time, one of the issues that I see that we have, you guys are gonna be coming up with your plan, and I think for us meeting together, a couple hours the other night, and just meeting each other, and then y'all pass some emails back and forth, here we are tonight. I think you're headed in the right direction. But one of my issues I have is you guys are gonna be bringing these to the commissioners. At the end of the day, one of the issues I have with the IBA and the Airport Authority is the commissioners are elected people, whether those guys are sitting up there or there's somebody else sitting up there tomorrow. The citizens elect these people, whether they're commissioners, whether they're councilmen or whatever. And that's who the citizens come to. And so when we talk about Airport Authority or IBA or any other board that we've got in the county, the ultimate buck stops with us. And so some of the things that we have on the authorities with people being able to make decisions on certain things that don't come to the Board of Commissioners, but yet we have to fund certain issues, that's something that I feel like we need to look at. Because that's a major issue that we have. And I used the example the other day to somebody. I said that's, you know, like giving your kid the credit card and then you just see what the bill is when it comes in at the end of the month. And we have to be careful with that. So that's an issue that I would like for you guys to look at. But at the same time, I apologize we didn't give you a little bit more direction. I think as a board, we should have given you a little bit more direction. But I think you'll get it. I think we'll get there.
When I went back through one of my facilitation books for Master Black Belt in the Lincoln events, the deliverables are supposed to be specific, measurable, and realistic. There were three slang words that they used, and I think we can do that if we put them in layman's terms, just say this should be this way, this should be that way, and just present them. So I think we've got our deliverables down about what we're going to present to you guys. What is the next? The thing before that is, what is the scope of this? How big is this? And the scope is defined as your constraints, your starting point, your end point in the process, the boundaries that we work within. In other words, we're not going to be addressing IBA because we're the airport authority, so we've pretty much put it in that. But are there any other limits or limitations that we should be looking at as far as our scope of this project, besides just this one document that we're looking at?
The operational piece, that's, I guess Commissioner Graham's been the most vocal about that. The way it's set up, it actually operates on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. You know, John, you were talking about other functioning problems in the county. If there's things that you all observe as citizens, or citizens that you talk with, that just the way you see it operating, you know, from the airport authority, I don't think you need to go into all the problems the county's got.
When you look at them, you're going to find systemic problems that's going to cause all different problems. There's going to be one or two of them.
I think you need to, and y'all, each of y'all got the IBA stuff too, correct? We did that. Of course, it's only the 3 pages. So I think you got to look at both. You're more tasked on the airport authority. But I think you got to look at both because that's, right now they're tied together. Whether they're supposed to be or should be or not, somewhat they are. You agree? Okay. Membership anyway.
Right.
And so, you know, I think you kind of got to look at both of them a little bit. You're working on this one, but you got to look at both to see kind of what's going on, and then realize there's some other issues that I feel like don't just look at this document that we're looking at. It's not just about this document. The document talks about membership, but we all agree pretty much going around this table about the membership part of it. But at the same time, We have a airport director that's a director of the airport, who's also a secretary of the airport authority, who's also the director of the IBA. Same. Got same. So that's another something to look at, that you're tied together, because again, I feel like you got an airport that's an airport. An IBA is something that does a different function for different things. That IBA was not set up for the airport. The IBA was set up for the IBA. The airport authority was set up for that. And those two, okay? And so I think we need to kind of look at that too. Don't just look at the document.
Go ahead.
Well, that's another part of what Cecilia was talking about, is the development in the county. One of the reasons that Mr. Swafford was appointed to both by Sharon in the early turn of the century was to save money and save taxpayer money. And, you know, there is connection between, you can have industrial growth at the airport, obviously. You can have economic development at the airport, which is greatly needed. You know, the Dassault company that I mentioned in the email. So there is connection there, but there doesn't need to be, well, getting opinions, but we seem to have all agreed on that. There needs to be a separation there.
Maybe there's a break even once the airport starts producing X amount of dollars, maybe at that point it breaks the tie with the IBA, because then they're self-contained. Standalone at that point. Maybe that's something we go with. To, you know, to tag along to your point, which is there are some things that are intertwined in it too. You know, but maybe there's a better definition of what is considered IBA and how it interacts with the airport versus other projects that are going on. So,
From a facilitator standpoint, we're starting to work the problems. A lot of times, when you're facilitating the process improvement.
Well, I guess I was going to say this.
They start working the problems.
You're right. I'm going to say this. There are two different functions. It's the IBA and the airport authority. They have two different jobs. The IBA is out there that can do things for the airport authority. The IBA is out there can do things for economic development. That's what they're needed for. The IBA is out there, right or wrong, decided to do a film studio. That's what the IBA is doing over here. The airport authority is two different things. And when the airport authority wants to do some industrial business out there, they go to the IBA, and we've already established a separate, and so that's why I want you to look at those hats. And as far as saving money or not saving money by somebody wearing two hats, the bottom line is both of those positions pay well. They're just held by one person.
I got a suggestion from there again, from the facilitator standpoint. We keep the scope to this document. We write down all of our recommendations to this document, and then we have a sideboard where we make other suggestions that are outside the basic scope. We focus on this document, and as we go through this document, we may find several things besides directors and who does bonds and who doesn't do bonds. But we could make a sidebar list of what other topics need to be addressed. And I can almost foresee that we might ought to have an IBA committee team, if you would, later down the road, where we get together with the other team to discuss the membership. I would recommend that we keep our scope strictly to this documents and changes to it right now, and then have a sidebar list of other process or other improvements we could make.
I think
Would be my recommendation.
that seems to be a clear charge was the law, but I think we just need to keep it open, because, like Todd was saying, it was not specifically framed what we can and can't talk about. We got to at least have some boundaries, otherwise we'll be going off all over the place.
We'll be solving, traffic jams and hours.
But on the IBA, I thought we ought to at least go around like we did with the airport and just kind of talk about that. It's only 3 pages, so I think it might be good just at least for the record have shown that we went over that, talked about it, and then in the future, perhaps need either the chair and the secretary meet with them and try and perhaps arrange a joint meeting down the road just to kind of see how, just to have some interaction and communication, because we can learn probably from both sides. Okay.
Especially with the interaction, like everybody said, when we address the membership, when we divorce, or if we divorce from the IBA, our committee, from this document, then they need to be aware of what we're doing. So.
Right. So with that, John, you want to talk a little bit about, like, a few minutes on your, any comments on the IBA Act?
The IBA, the section that I read was number one, was very, very vague. To me, it needed some guts put to it. It was kind of, and there again, the more you put into it, the more restrictive it is. The membership was the number one thing that I saw. I think the IBA and the Airport Authority ought to be 2 separate entities at one. I had a thought, and I talked with Mike about this earlier this week, about merging the economic development with the IBA into one county department and have them function just like a regular county department. They come to the commissioners and ask for new police cars just like the sheriff's department does, and the same with the airport authority. I would make them functionally, when I looked at both sides of the picture, I would make them both functionally county departments that reported just like the sheriff's department, just like the water department or the highway department or whatever. They have annual budgets for projects. They bring the proposals to the commissioners, and the commissioners vote yea or nay for their projects. And I think we, from the IDA standpoint and the economic development, because the economic development and the IDA is so closely related, I think we could have some efficiencies in both of those staffs with reductions. Plus, I think it'd be more efficient and would work better. You've got the people that's developing the initial contacts, and then you've got the people that's actually bringing them in and doing the implementation. So if you keep that in one part of the house, to me, it would be like having a sheriff's department where you'd have the jails and you'd have patrolmen. So that was my take on it. And after reading the airport authority.
Well, with regards to the IBA, I looked at the one section 51D5, which the Colonel had mentioned there, and I thought that was verbiage, like you said, in 1960, and it really didn't call for relating to an airport. That may need to be broadened to include anything that we may feel it needs to cover in the future. But again, this is what I felt would be discussed on the IBA steering committee. Other than that, I didn't get into the fact that, you know, where their money was coming from and what they were purchasing and how they were going at it. I felt that my focus was more on the airport and that one crossover into this. Understanding tonight, I learned that there are individuals that hold multiples, and I understand why they may multiple positions. I understand why they may have been assigned those positions back in the beginning. It may be necessary now to change those the structure of those positions and who's put in them. But other than that, I really didn't concentrate on the IBA and to that extent. Other than the membership, I think it should be separate.
Yeah, I had a similar thought, and I didn't bother trying to check this out because you know, we're the airport authority steering.
Didn't need to dissect this one.
Yeah, I didn't have to worry about this one, but you know, we had an ordinance that had 33 sections or so, and we were given the IBA that only has one section. So I'm not real sure if we've got 30 other sections of this ordinance that we just didn't get. which I didn't really want, or if,
It should be 1962.
1960,
I
1972.
was gonna say, I think the
They
General
could see something
Assembly,
of today.
I think they wised up over a decade.
yeah, well, this is 10 years older, but, so it may represent, all 30 sections in this one section.
2014.
Nobody understands it.
So essentially, all we had was the membership aspect of it is the way what I thought it focused on, and I've already made my comment that I thought was odd, that their members at large had a 3-year term and Airport Authority had a 4-year term, but they were mixed and matched and together. Other than that, I didn't spend any real time looking at this one.
Last call.
So, I would say the one thing that I noticed one thing that I'm seeing consistently is the members, and the members are always those that were elected officials, be it for the city of Hiram, the city of Dallas, the commissioners themselves. Maybe it's time where we actually sit down, and much like the steering committee was actually made up of members that were asked to volunteer on behalf of a particular commissioner, the economic development, or I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, Chamber of Commerce, thank you very much. And maybe that's what we really need to do is, as opposed to having elected officials having to do their day-to-day jobs in addition to managing and being on these boards, maybe they appoint people to represent them, or even not necessarily represent the same mindset, but at least they've volunteered somebody to represent their position on the board. And that way, at least you're guaranteed to break them up, and you're not getting the same person with the same mindset over and over again, and you're getting the same decisions 3 times over from an elected official.
That would
down.
also make it more accountable, because if you had a separate IBA and the Airport Authority and no commissioners were assigned to it directly, when the IBA came with a proposal, these guys would be voting members on the development of it, but they would be voting on the, yes, we're going to spend the county dollars on it. And so that would make a clear, decisive line where there's no perspective of impropriety.
Right. And it goes back to as well, I mean, the county itself, I mean, 1962, I don't even know what the population was, but if in 1980 it was 25,000, I can only imagine that maybe we were at 20,000. With that being said, the county has obviously grown. It's going to continue to grow. We obviously also have people that are from different business sectors in this county and are no longer agricultural based. So we are drawing in expertise from throughout the Atlanta metro area in different job sectors. I think we could probably find these people that are qualified to be representative, be it on the IBA and or on the Airports Authority. Granted, I'm speaking on behalf of the IBA right now, but maybe that's something we need to look at in the future.
Terry, you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
You're up to talk.
I don't have anything to add. I generally agree with all of the comments that I've heard, and I'll just continue to listen.
Okay. Something Larry said made me think about, maybe you could actually add more people to the board as well to get, I don't know how many of you all serve on a lot of different boards. A lot of times there's 8 to 12 people where you get more people, more expertise, more diversification. I'm not sure where they would come from, but just as an idea, we consider, with more people in the county, Georgia Tech folks, Lockheed folks, Corps of Engineer folks, and with special expertise that they might be able to bring additional technical knowledge to the board. So I want to throw that out. And then number 2, just obviously the paragraph D5 is much more narrow, and it talks about your typical industrial stuff, factory, mill, shop, processing plant. It might be a stretch to talk about airports within that, but I think maybe that was some of that legislation or the lawsuit that I read. Maybe that's where I'm getting that from, but maybe that was the argument by somebody. But so it just goes back to the separating the 2 organizations. They have different focuses, different charges to do. So that's what I have.
As far as the IBA, that one is antiquated because like nobody thought in 1972 that they were going to have to be dealing with the airport issue to this extent. And, you know, as far as loaning money to the airport authority, I'm sure that was never even thought of back then. So I think probably I hate to go back to airport authority, maybe this needs to be revisited. Maybe there needs to be proposed language in this to revisit both the IBA and the airport authority every 5 years, and things change. And that would require that to be done, or we're not following the rules. So maybe that's something that needs to be considered.
To do what now? Every 5 years?
To revisit the actual constitution and make any appropriate changes. Even if it's necessary before then, they can always do that. But make it mandatory that it does get revisited, but for both IBA and airport authority every 5 years. People get busy. I mean, I understand, but and nobody's going to sit down and read this document, you know, probably even once a year that's on those boards. So
No, I understand where you're going with that. I mean, it gives a fresh set of eyes on the current situation at that time.
It does.
If it's not 5 years, maybe it's a decade or something
Right,
along those
something
lines. But
along those
once,
lines.
once again, you pull in the citizen steering committee to then review the current laws and make sure
Right.
that what's going on
right.
is adaptable to what's
Right.
going on today.
Like you said, you know, the agricultural things aren't as relevant anymore. So there's other things that.
All right, so we've talked about the airport authority law, the industrial authority law, and talked a little bit about our objectives, scope, schedule of completion. Maybe we talk now about the next couple meetings in advance and who else we want to bring in to get additional input as we kind of in the fact gathering mode at this point. We've looked at the law. And just get some more input from some other folks to help us continue to study the situation, help the project kind of keep gelling together.
Right now, as far as our schedule, we've agreed on the 26th at 6 o'clock in the same place here. We may in the conference room. I'm going to start working a little closer with Rebecca to get us into the conference room and make sure that we know exactly where we're going to be. And we planned on having Howard Maxwell come and talk to us next week, or week after next. What type of time frame do you think we should put on his briefing as a committee, or is that appropriate for state representatives? So you got to sit down in 15 minutes, or?
My suggestion would be that I wouldn't say we necessarily limit or put a hard limit on it, but let's plan on 30 minutes, but if it extends into it, then you know, we'll obviously adjust as we go. I would like it to be more of kind of a working session where we can bounce ideas off of him as we go through these particular questions.
What do you think about a 15-minute presentation with open discussion following, and that way it's just wide open, so.
I have no objections to that.
That sounds good. Who's kind of the contact with Howard?
I can call him,
Okay.
I've got to harass him anyway. He's in the Army.
So,
I think you're gonna get the most, give them 5 minutes and then start in on the Q&As, and
Yeah.
one question will lead to a question you're gonna ask Cecilia, think of another question, and you'll dig deeper into things that you're really interested in. In fact, it's my opinion, if you ask him to give a 15-minute presentation, he might get off on something that's really not what y'all are most interested in, or feel like it would contribute to what you're trying to accomplish, your objectives here. And I also, you know, I've been around these folks quite a bit. If you want to have 2 or 3 of them at the same time, and they're used to meeting, if you want to have Howard and Paulette, you know, you may find more than one that's available, and then you'll just get more information, or maybe a different slant to it.
because they may have heard from constituents as well about how they feel about this airport authority, which they may be able to share with us.
I would also at the same time, not necessarily say that I would like to see Tom Cable at that meeting, but have somebody provide some legal background as we
County
move along, from the county side of it as well, to understand. And he may actually have a little bit more of a legal working knowledge as far as the state law itself and how it's actually implemented versus how it's presented to the General Assembly and then passed or voted upon. So it may be worth having him there as well.
How do we schedule a representative from the tally, what you call it, and what you call it?
Just tell us you want, and we'll get it.
Can we get a representative from the county law firm to be here next week, or the 26th? Is that what the board wants, or committee wants?
I just think we need to kind of give them some scope, since everybody on the clock, we want to be respectful of the county money. But we want to get good information too.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, with that said.
I think a good overview of the Development Authorities law and, how, this process works from a county lawyer perspective and how then it goes up to state folks, Howard and Paulette and them, and then kind of how it works its way through the process.
Right. And it may be, and this is my suggestion, then it may be worthwhile having, say, Tom Cable, since he is the legal representative for the Airports Authority, have him start off.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
And then work our way up to.
What's the sound process, John?
Yeah, that's, I just circled them back and forth and put them, that makes a lot of sense, because you and I had talked about how does the laws flow down from the federal government, and that addresses the question that I had for commissioners too, is how do the laws flow down? Do we have to meet everything that the state says, even if it's just improvements? So I'll get a hold of well, you're gonna get a hold of the law firm and have a representative here. Well,
Mr. Cable then?
who do you think would be the cheapest, the most representative?
It's probably the same rate.
I'd say Cable or Phillips.
Offer, Cable's an attorney for the IBA and the Airport Authority.
Well, then that's appropriate individual responsible.
Just for my information, is the law firm, can any of those lawyers come in and represent the county? Or is it specifically Mr. Cable is the airport authority?
He sues the Airport Authority and the IBA, and then you got Mr. Phillips, Jason Phillips is day-to-day that's with us. Then we've got a couple other ones that do other things in the tax office and so forth,
But he has responsibility for the airport?
Yes.
Okay, that's.
yes.
There's a couple of lawsuits going on right now, so we met the last couple of days, having to do with taxes.
Do they have to do with our ordinance charter that we got?
How many lawsuits are there that revolve around the airport authority?
You might want to have him be one of the things he talks about, and just kind of give us a status update.
I'm gonna actually stop in and talk to them if I can, just.
I would like to clear up one thing. I was gonna say something a minute ago, and someone's take a couple minutes, Mike, if it's okay. I think John made mention of economic development and the IBA, and we can all have different opinions. Those are two different organizations that do two different things. And the economic development is out there looking for businesses and helping businesses and facilitate them to get them into our county and encouraging them and putting things out there for them. And that's Jamie Gilbert's job. And so I could see one day maybe that job could maybe come underneath the county office, okay? I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there, because that's what you said.
Yeah, that was my.
But when it comes to economic development, they're over here. When it comes to the IBA, they're over here. If Jamie brings in a company that he needs the IBA to work on when it comes to site and site preparation and different things that's going on, that's a job of the IBA. I would not personally ever see those coming together. We would be doing the same thing we're sitting here doing right now. And that is,
Good point.
I don't need Jamie or whoever else being out there working with folks, and then he's also in charge of facilitating something that's happening. But I could see that one day that it could be that economic development could be could be back housed, say, here, okay? And it may be done a little bit different. With that said, when you look at and I know we're not tasked with the IBA, but when you look at the 3 pages of the IBA, there's nothing in that even today that hinders anything for the most part of what economic development needs to do. They can do what they need to do with the old language that's as old as all of us, or older. Yeah. And so, but nothing hinders him from being able to do what he needs to do with what's here today. And so to make it, the next thing I want to make clear is nothing in the airport, nothing in the IBA scope hinders anything from being done within reason of what its job is that it can do out at the airport, such as whether it's to build a hangar, whether it's to build a water tower, whether it's to do things like that. And some of that could be, you could stretch some of that. The lawsuit is an issue with the IBA loaning money. And that's where it doesn't say in there about them loaning money. And so the issue that I see with that, me personally as a commissioner, is here the 5 of us are responsible for the monies of the airport and the budget. And then if they're in trouble with these lawsuits, we've got to finance those, we've got to fight those lawsuits, okay, with taxpayer dollars. And then we're over here doing the same thing with the IBA. And we're paying the IBA's bills is what we're doing. And then the IBA decides they're gonna loan some money to the airport. So that's where that lawsuit came from. It's really not about changing the scope of the IBA on that committee in order for them to be able to do something there. It was all about the loan, if that makes sense. But I did want to throw that out with the economic development, because I didn't want to get that, because I've sat down and talked to them on several occasions.
I hadn't even thought about what you just brought up. That's a good point about, the right pocket wants to borrow a quarter from the left pocket.
And the whole reason for economic development to begin with was to get one place to go to when people came in, because they were going to the chamber, going to the cities, or and not getting the answers that they needed to get.
The way I was looking at it was economic development would take it from, we're talking to people till we actually got a building for them to move into, making it a one-stop shopping center. I will say this, when you mentioned the IBA at the airport building hangars and stuff, with my experience with airport operations, the airport authority takes care of their own buildings. That is a project that they approve and they manage and they track. It was, for example, Memphis, the Memphis Airport, the Director of Operations takes care of all the installations and management of the programs within his airport. The city's building authority is pretty much the inspectors that come out and inspect the buildings. But the actual financial part of tracking the construction and getting the hangars built is done by the airport operations committee.
Was it the way they did it from the beginning, or was it? See, that's where I kind of get into that.
They have the
That's where
money and they own the property.
That's where I get into it is, maybe the IBA, they've got the funding source in order to help facilitate that, and until the airport gets up to a certain.
Memphis has their own funding because they presented.
They do now, but I'm saying back at the beginning.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
Memphis Airport is older than Elvis Presley, so.
Certainly, that's my whole point, is at this point, they're self-sustaining, they can get away with that. Back at the beginning, maybe that's not the same case, so.
So it's about
We're off track.
12 after. We want to try and get out of here by 7:30, I think. Probably a good plan to go for an hour and a half. We can always go over, but, so we got meeting the 26th. Howard's going to be here. Mr. Cable's going to be here. He's going to talk first about the legislation, changing it, and maybe the status of the sort of overview of the lawsuit. Seemed like that might be. Does that sound good?
Right, and I would say that, once again, as you said, not to waste the county's money any more than we need to, but maybe actually hold 2 30 minutes at that point in time. I mean, I don't know if he's out an hourly rate, or if he's got a contract that it states up to so many hours before he has to
Well, I was
start getting
thinking-
paid hourly, so.
I just think 15 minutes should be enough time to get such a meeting.
Sure.
So, the next was, the meetings after that, because right now we don't really have anything out that far. Is this date and time working for folks, Thursday evening still? Maybe 1 and 2 weeks after that? Just we have a calendar, where does that put us?
I got mine turned off.
We're talking about the 2nd of July.
That is correct.
I guess we won't be doing it that week.
No, so the 10th would be the next following Thursday.
The 10th would work for me.
I can say this time works for me.
So that'd be 3 weeks out.
That is correct.
Mhm.
If you, just a suggestion, if you met on the 26th, and then you met on the 10th, those 2 days, you could say that you're gonna meet on the Thursdays after the commissioner meetings, because that's the schedule that you're on. In other words, we've got a commissioner meeting on the 24th, you guys are meeting on the 26th.
I'm trying to be on that schedule, that way we can do this,
And then
all
we-
this publication stuff be on the same schedule.
Then our next one would be on July 8th. And you're talking about meeting on the 10th. Our next one would be the July 22nd. So if you're gonna do 2 weeks, but if you could keep it on that, that may be something easy to kind of look at. We're at the second and fourth Tuesday of the month. So you could follow the second and fourth Tuesday of the month if that's what you chose.
If that sounds good, I think we go with that.
And another suggestion, it might be that your chair may want to just talk to the IBA chair. They're meeting on the 26th, which we said that because we might be in 2 different rooms. But if they actually needed to see, maybe if it's Tom Cagle that y'all are going to have, it could be that Tom can come talk to y'all and Tom can go.
You can charge it to them.
And then we just, yeah,
Well, I mean, maybe they could just talk to both of us, I mean, same information.
right. So it very well could, so you just may want to kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, that's a good point.
work that out and just see. Maybe he'll work for donuts
Yeah.
instead of pay, who knows? Yeah.
Maybe it's side bacon.
So that kind of gets us out to July 22nd, so that should be enough for now.
Seems like we're probably going to end up on an every other week type schedule following commissioners, and we can adjust those a little better. If we need to do more or do less. Works for me.
And of course, we can talk during the week or have emails, just to kind of share thoughts, so. I don't know, does anybody have anything else? Then we could wrap up a little early.
Just a general comment is, I'm gonna send out the minutes and the agenda for next meeting, and I will also try to put together from steering committee charter that I'll send out to the team members for everybody's review and
What-
remarks and stuff. And I'm gonna try to get it out this weekend, because I'm gonna be going out of town next week.
Well, what's the charter? What's the
It's
scope?
basically just our objectives, what we talked about, the scope,
Oh.
and what our parameters are. It just puts it all in
Kind of,
one piece of paper.
He's trying to steer cats is what he's trying to do.
It's called Post Order Drill with Cats.
keeps us on task.
To echo what Todd said, and also admit that it's really not acceptable that y'all didn't have more to go on. But it's not too late, you know, you're still just getting to know one another and reading through the documents. So we can work together, or we can find out what the other commissioners, including the chair, including the county manager, if there are certain expectations. And, you know, I'll just commit to bringing that back to you.
Anything that we haven't addressed.
And we've all been in jobs and had projects where it starts off a little rocky and we're not really sure what the scope is, so we understand that, but we start with this as a premise and it'll just kind of evolve from there, so. We just appreciate you guys setting up this steering committee, give us an opportunity, and the citizens as well that can communicate with us, and we'll talk about other ways to get other input, so. With that, I was gonna ask for a motion to adjourn. Anything else?
Just put, I said, just on the, on your minutes, maybe put who's present.
Okay.
Yeah,
That way you have that, and then, like tonight.
have a little attendance box at the
Yeah,
top.
and Terry's on the phone, just put who's
Uh,
present, what, that
I've
way
got
you
Jerry's
know.
telephone, but no, they're
Yeah.
here, so.
And then I did send you the other contact for the other,
And I will get something out to him,
okay,
probably not, so.
okay.
Terry, you can't make a motion, but you're still there, aren't you?
I am still here.
I'll make that motion. To adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor to adjourn? Aye. Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank y'all.
See y'all in 2 weeks.